Okay. Om Mani Padme Hum. Oh, it works. That's one in a row, as my husband would say. Okay. Oh, it's wonderful to be here today, and it's good to see all of you here. Thanks for coming. Is today Father's Day? Next weekend's Father's Day. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to remember if we had when the holiday was. See, my parents have passed away a long time ago, so I tend to forget these special days. I guess you could say it's in my heart all the year, but you like to recall the good times and things like that, so it's lovely. And then, of course, we have, before we get started today, I wanted to just put in a good word for our prayer get-together on Wednesday morning. We're going to be here both in person and on Zoom for an hour, starting at 9:30 on Wednesday, because it's a Buddhist holiday. Who knew? There are such things as Buddhist holidays. And this particular Buddhist holiday is, I guess you could say, it's the most sacred day in the Buddhist calendar, because it recalls 3 occasions in the life of the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni. It recollects and observes his birth, his attainment of enlightenment, and his passing away. And so all 3 of those are observed on the same day. And so it's said in Tibetan astrology, it's said that the effects of positive and negative actions done on one of these 4 great occasions is multiplied many, many thousands of times. So they emphasize practice on that day. It's like, don't get mad at your dog or your boss on that day, but try to be beneficial in whatever way you can. We'll be here in person and online on Zoom doing a set of prayers, and the prayers will be put in chat in the Zoom, and you can join in, because it's a good day to make aspirations, like, may I accomplish something good in my life? May I accomplish something good today? And that sort of thing. So this particular holiday is happening on Wednesday. It's the lunar calendar. And so it is this particular day. So that's coming up on Wednesday. I had a guy tell me, he said, I actually asked my boss for the day off. And I said, really? He said, yeah, other people get their holidays off. Why shouldn't Buddhists get their holidays off? I said, well, there's that's kind of a cool thing. That's kind of a cool thing. Anyway, so even if all you can do is just join us and put your earbuds in and listen while you work, it's kind of a fun thing. Well, before we start today's talk, let's set our motivation. Let's recite the refuge prayer, which is the front of this sheet, and we'll do it 2 times in English, and then I'll lead a chant of it in Tibetan language. So it's like that. Okay. It begins with the words, in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And now I'll recite it in Tibetan. O Sanjay Chudang Soji Chonamla Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suji Daji Jinso Jibe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sanjay Druparsho. Okay, thank you. I'll recite a short prayer of my own, and then we'll begin. O Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche, Dagi Chiwar Pede Ten Shala, Kadrin Jembo Gone Je Sunte, Kusum Tugging Udrup Sal to Soul. Okay, thank you. Okay, so today's topic is, I thought I would pick something cheerful. Loneliness, is that good? Does that sound good? Is that cheerful? Is that a cheerful topic for everybody? We're going to talk about loneliness. Are you all right with that? Hope nobody's feeling too lonely today. Anyway, it kind of occurred to me this week that it would be kind of a fun topic to discuss. Is loneliness fun? I don't think so. It's never been that way for me, but you know, it could have there could be some benefit in it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But part of the reason I wanted to talk about it was because there's a lot going on in the world right now. I don't know if you noticed. There's a lot going on, and everybody's talking about all the things that are going on, and there's a lot of reaction to what's going on, and a lot of people are feeling, shall we say, isolated in their lives in lots of different ways. I mean, you know, we know it. We know loneliness. We know isolation. We know it. We feel it, and then all the social scientists are talking about it. How there's like an epidemic of loneliness, especially among older people. And so I thought it would be good to have a little bit of a discussion about how Buddhism views this, especially in light of the fact that if you've done any reading in Buddhism, you'll see teachings, because loneliness is a problem for people. They feel isolated, they feel alone, and social media doesn't help. Let's put it this way. You know, social media makes us think we're connected, but and probably not in the best ways, you know. And then we get a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out and that kind of thing. We get a lot of problems from social media. In fact, I think it's almost more trouble than it's worth, except the baby pictures and the funny animal videos. We all have to agree. We have to all agree, sharing our family photos and looking at the funny animals. It helps. So, but the reason I wanted to talk about it vis-a-vis Buddhism is because we hear about the dangers of loneliness, and yet Buddhist texts and teachings talk about solitude. I don't know, they talk about how important solitude is for meditation. And I just happened to have a copy of the 37 Actions of a Bodhisattva. The mind of attachment to loved ones wavers like water. This is number 2 for those of you who have it. The mind of attachment to loved ones wavers like water. The mind of hatred for enemies burns like fire. Oh. The mind of ignorance, which forgets what to adopt and what to discard, is greatly obscured. Abandoning one's homeland is the practice of a bodhisattva. Enforced loneliness? What's going on there? And then number 3, when harmful places are abandoned, disturbing emotions gradually diminish. Maybe that's why people quit social media. I don't know. When harmful places are abandoned, disturbing emotions gradually diminish. Without distraction, virtuous endeavors naturally increase. Being clear-minded, definite understanding of the Dharma teachings arises. Resorting to secluded places is the practice of a bodhisattva. So we hear about the epidemic of loneliness on one hand, and on the other hand, we hear how great solitude is and how we should all try it. It seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and we have to figure out how do these two things work together. So I thought that that's kind of where I'd like to start. I like to start in the middle of something. When I was a journalist, I preferred to start my news stories in the middle of something, rather than at the beginning or at the end. That just like, let's start in the middle. Let's just get into the mix right away. So how do we cultivate the solitude that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are talking about? How do we cultivate that solitude without increasing our loneliness? How do we do both of those things? So I thought that would be a fun thing to discuss. So first, if we look at what the Buddhist teachings say about loneliness, we get a little bit of a perspective on what the Buddha had to say about it. So first, the Buddha talked a lot about what we call the four truths known by the noble. The four truths. Suffering is part of life. We might try to run, might try to hide, but there's still suffering. And even if there isn't terrible suffering, there's this feeling that something's just not quite right. You know, maybe I don't have everything I need, you know. I feel like a little bit of dissatisfaction, a little bit of unease. So whether it's like terrible suffering or just this uneasy feeling that something's not right, that's part of life. We can't avoid it. So that's the first noble truth. Second noble truth, this suffering has a cause. And the cause of that suffering is, the Buddha said, clinging, fixation, attachment, and so on. Clinging and fixation. I can see how that would work, because even happiness can be suffering if you cling to it. For example, I like to tell the story of one of my husband's friends who bought a new camera to take on his vacation. He was so excited about this new camera because it had all the fancy stuff on it. It was quite expensive, but he had enough money to get it. So he took it on his vacation, but he never took it out of the bag because he was so scared that someone would see his fine camera and then want to steal it. He could not enjoy his camera. So you get the idea that even happiness can be suffering if you cling to what you're experiencing. So that is the second of the four truths known by the noble, which is that suffering has a cause, and that cause is our clinging and fixation. We cling to people, to situations, to ideas. I mean, all you have to do is listen to the talking heads on television, or shall we call them the arguing heads on television, to see that people can get bent out of shape about ideas. So we cling to all these things, and they bring on suffering. And but the good news is, because suffering is caused by clinging and fixation, there is a solution. Because anything that has a cause automatically, logically, has a solution. So if the cause is clinging and fixation, well, it stands to reason the solution, the third noble truth, is letting go. Let's all just let go. Yeah, right. It sounds like a good idea, but it's a little bit difficult in the execution. You know, it's a little difficult. And so that's why he taught the fourth noble truth. Because you can't just say to somebody, here, oh yeah, that terrible suffering you're having, oh, just let that go. It's not possible. You have to have a method. You have to have a technique. You have to have a way to let go. And so you have to learn how to let go. And that's the fourth noble truth, which is the path that leads to the end of suffering. And the Eightfold Noble Path is too many things for one lecture, so I'll just say, I'll use the four statements made by the Buddha. The Buddha said, do no harm, practice virtue, tame your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha, meaning don't look any further, this is it. So that leaves just three, because that last one's just a summary. So now I have to have three things I remember. Do no harm, practice virtue, tame your mind. So do no harm means don't harm yourself, don't harm other people. Practice virtue means take care of yourself and benefit others. And tame the mind, that means to meditate. Because otherwise, how are you going to know what virtue is and what harm is? How are you ever going to know if your mind's not clear? If your mind is unclear and always like roiled up, like muddy water is roiled up, if you never let that muddy water settle so that the mud can go to the bottom and see the clarity, you won't see it. So this is why meditation is important. And so that's why meditation is the number one reason people walk into our front door, because they would like to do some meditation practice. And that's great, because I got to tell you, it really does help us to understand a lot of things when we can just sit and be without anything other than a simple object to place our attention on. Because let's face it, part of the reason we feel lonely and isolated in the midst of this glut of information and all this incoming info and all of these social media posts and things, the reason we feel so lonely in the midst of all this is because we don't have any peace of mind in which to study and be. We have to always be responding to something. And so what if we just stopped responding for a little while and just sat and were present with our breath, perhaps, just placing our attention on the breath as it comes in and goes out. Something simple, not complicated. Now, maybe our mind is still running a mile a minute. Chatter, 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 chatter. But if you just stay with your object, whether the object is the breath, whether the object is an item you've placed on your table and you're resting your gaze on it, your eyes could literally look at it forever. I mean, really. But your attention will wander. And that when your attention wanders, you just bring it back to your visual object. You can do it with sound, too. If the breath doesn't work for you, you can use a visual object, or you can work with sound. Like right now, we have, the fan is on our ventilating system. So you can be aware of that steady, constant sound, or the sound of the cars as they go down the street. So the idea is to place your attention on something, and then when your attention wanders, you bring it back. That's the most simple form of meditation there is. And it allows us just to be okay with being. We can just be. And at first it's tough, because we want to solve something. We want to do something. We get paid for this, And some of my friends who are creative types, they do art for their living, or they interact with other people for their living and things like that. They have to always be on, But meditation is a time for them to just unplug and be. And it's a different way of experiencing our mind. And for many people, it's the first time that they experience their mind differently. Just that quiet moment of quiet sitting, it's like, oh, I can do this. I can do this quiet mind thing. Cool. And so this is where we begin to let go of the things that cause us suffering. Because someday you're going to be sitting in meditation and some big, ugly, hairy thought is going to come up. It's going to come out of the morass of your mind. There it is, big, ugly, and looking at you. And maybe it's a thought of something that happened in the past. Maybe it's something you're worried about, or whatever. But if you can apply the technique of meditation, you can label it thinking and then let it go. And one day, when you do that, that thought is going to disappear. It's going to happen. Even if it hasn't happened for you yet, it'll happen at least once. And then you'll go, that's cool. Because it'll allow you to notice that your mind can actually be without complexity, without tension, without having to solve something. And that is like a vacation, let's face it. And it's a way of feeling and being without a label. You're sitting there without a label. I'm not a parent, I'm not a child, I'm not a sister or brother, I'm not a worker, I'm not a co-worker. You know, I have no responsibilities right here, right now. I can just be me. And it's a good feeling. It is a good feeling. So this is why meditation is so central to all of the Buddhist teachings. Now, you might say, well, now what does that have to do with loneliness? Well, the teachings of the Buddha are that loneliness is not an inherent part of being alone. It's part of a story we tell ourselves about what's going on in our life. We are alone because this happened, or we're alone because that happened, or then we start to get lost in the story of why we're alone. And we have this sense that we are here, other people are there, and there's this big chasm in between us. We have this idea that we are separate from other people. And we worry that maybe they're better, or they're happier, or whatever. We get all kinds of ideas. And so we just sit there with those ideas. And now you see why in meditation you let go of your thoughts. Because you don't need to be trying to work that out. You just try to be. But think about it. Remember that big hairy thought that you had that you then let go of? Guess what? Your whole story about who you think you are is made of these. This one, and this one, and this one. Our whole self-concept is created from all of these random thoughts that we have in any given day. And I have a side story to tell for a second. Okay, so like, who else has this happen? You're sitting in the dentist chair, and then your dentist decides that they're going to talk to you. You have all these things in your mouth, and they're just like chatting away, and they want you to respond, and you're going, Okay, so my dentist, he's long since retired, but I first came out of a 3-year retreat. People start telling me stuff. Why? Do I have a sign on my face? I don't know. I don't wear the robes in everyday life. I wear civilian clothes in everyday life because I'm not a monastic. But somehow the dentist knows that I've been gone for 3 years, partly because I told him. And, and anyhow, he knows that I went on a religious retreat for 3 years. And so he starts telling me his dreams. I'm kind of helpless there, right? And he's just, I had a dream about this, and then suddenly the scene changed, and then this happened, and then suddenly the scene changed, and then that happened, and I'm just like, And then he says, how many dreams can you have in a night? And finally, when all the accoutrements were taken out of my mouth, I said, well, how many thoughts can you have in a day? It's the same. Because those dreams we have are just pictures with all those thoughts. Random. Maybe not fully random. I mean, there are people who know more about these things. But the idea is that we have all of these dreams, we have all of these thoughts, and we identify with them. We think, oh, that's me. I'm the one who thinks this, or I'm the one who believes that. I'm this one who does this. And so we have this sense of self. And we secretly think other people are better, or perhaps we secretly think we're better. It's happened. And so these stories are what makes us feel lonely. We feel there's a separation between ourselves and others. Maybe they're better, maybe we're better, but we get all involved in the drama of it all. And we don't really look for avenues of connection. We don't look for avenues of connection, engagement, communication. We just don't look for that. Because, we're all individuals and we're all supposed to take care of ourselves and all that kind of stuff. So all of these ideas feed the idea of being isolated and lonely. And so this grasping, wanting people in your life and so forth, it's not a wrong thing because we need people in our life. But we can hold on too tight, as any teenager can attest, as they're trying out friendships. Friendships, it's a thing. We have to learn about it sometime. Sometimes we learn it when we're kids, sometimes we don't. And I remember when I was a kid, everybody said to me, "Oh, I won't be your friend. You're too bossy." And I'm like, am I? And so, so I went through a lot. And I was trying out how to be a friend. I didn't know what to do. So I did it the wrong way, repeatedly. Came on too strong, came on too light, this, that, everything. So we're trying to learn how to be a person. It's not easy. But we get all these stories. We get all these ideas. And these ideas become habitual. And then that feeds feelings of being separated from other people. And so that's what the Buddha said about loneliness, is that it's all part of this fictional idea we have of who we think we are. What we are really are all these thoughts held together by habit. And so this is why in Buddhism, we first begin to watch our thoughts and let them go. By watching thoughts and letting them go, we can gradually know which ones are important and which ones are not important. Gradually see which ones we want to adopt and see which ones we want to let go of. And after doing meditation for a while, we will find that things that used to bother us a lot don't bother us as much. But then there's something magical that happens. There was one Buddhist teacher, he wrote about it in one of his essays. He said, for every person who meditates in a group, there is a moment when they suddenly cast their glance around them and realize, there are other people here in this room with me. And he said, that's the beginning of compassion, because you realize you're not alone. That you're sitting there with your thoughts and your little struggles and your thoughts that you're trying to let go of, succeeding and not succeeding. You're doing it, but they're doing it too. They are just like you. And that's the moment when empathy is born, and empathy can grow into love, appreciation, gratitude, compassion. But this idea that we're not alone, it's a good feeling. And that's why I think why people enjoy meditating in a group. Because several people have told me, well, when I'm meditating in the group, I have like the silent support of everybody who's sitting around me. I feel their silent support because they're doing what I'm doing. Whether we're doing it well or badly doesn't matter. We're doing it together. And so this is one way that a person can experience the solitude of meditation, being there with their thoughts and working with their thoughts and letting go of their thoughts. And yet, you could say, let's be alone together. That's one of my favorite lines from a Leonard Cohen song. Let's be alone together. The idea is that through meditation, we build a silent support network of people who are with us. And that is a way to connect with people that doesn't depend upon the story. And many people tell me that they feel this kind of support also in recovery groups, like the ones we sponsor here, or social groups and so forth, that people feel this silent connection and support. And so you can have the solitude of your own thoughts and letting go of thoughts, but you can also have that silent support of other people. But you can go even farther than that, because the Buddha taught a form of meditation called metta, or loving kindness, where you actually use your imagination to build a connection with everyone through your imagination. You sit quietly in your meditation seat, and you imagine that as you breathe out, that you give goodness and happiness to everybody in the entire universe. First of all, you have to imagine everybody in the entire universe. Not hard, just big. It's a lot. The dust mites, and the whales and everything in between, And you just wish them all well on the out breath. And you can do this for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And through the vehicle of your imagination, you are building a connection to people, both the people in the room with you and the people outside the room, the people who are distant to you. You can even include people you do not like. And that silent, imaginary sending of goodness. And so this intentional being through meditation can lead to empathy, recognizing that other people are going through the same struggles that you're going through. And also you can take it further or farther with using your imagination to imagine that you extend love and compassion to everyone. You can even extend love and compassion to yourself. You can put yourself in the crowd if you're feeling a little depleted, a little sad, a little lonely. You can be your own best friend for a minute. And by being able to do that, we're making friends with our mind, really. That's really what's happening in meditation, is we're making friends with ourselves, making friends with our own mind. And through that, we can see how others are just like us. And we can be our own best friend and help ourselves. And so there are yet other methods that you can use to work with feelings, the feelings and emotions you have. And through practices such as the compassion meditation practice known as sending and receiving, or Tonglen, where you learn how to work with emotions that arise in your everyday life. Here's an example. Maybe you're having a moment where you're driving your car, or you're sitting on the bus, or you're walking down the street, and you remember someone that you knew once and you miss them. You feel sad because you miss them. And in that moment, you can use your imagination and imagine that you send them love and send them compassion. Or, alternatively, you can imagine that you're giving yourself love and yourself compassion in the middle of that story you've talked to yourself about. So you can use these practices in your everyday life to work with emotions that arise so that you don't have to carry them alone. You have the support of your internal best friend. So hopefully this helps us to face up to our emotions rather than doing one of the two unhealthy things. You know, when you have an emotion, sometimes it's a little intense, and you might feel the need to run away. Like, oh, that's an intense feeling. I don't like that feeling. So you run away to one of two extremes. You know, you either suppress it, pretending it's not there. Some people call that stuffing it down. Or you kind of explode with it. And in neither case have you really dealt with it. You've run away from it in one of two ways. But what if you just stayed there with it for a moment, stayed with that, and sent yourself and everybody else who's feeling that, sent yourself some love and healing? How about that? How would that be? It's creative. It's a different type of creative engagement with our own feelings so that we don't have to feel victimized by what we are thinking and feeling. So this all feeds into the Buddha's teachings, which is that our mind is the determiner of our experience. The first lines of the Buddha's book of sayings, the Dhammapada, we are what we think, all that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. All that we, okay, so it's like we are what we think, all that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. This is true, isn't it? And so the practice of meditation helps us to work with those stories and those feelings. And so by sort of embracing the reality of how we are feeling in the moment, even if we're feeling uncomfortable, we can begin to cultivate love for ourselves rather than feel the complex feelings of egotism. You're like, oh, woe is me. My dad was a recovery guy. He was in his recovery group for about 26 years. And he used to talk about, I hate hanging out with that guy. And I said, who's that guy? He said, the one that keeps telling me all those bad things about myself. So he said, yeah, I'm going to hang out with a better group of people. So the idea is that because otherwise, if we can't find a way to be happy within ourselves, we're always going to be looking outside of ourselves for satisfaction. We're always going to be looking outside of ourselves for affirmation. We're always going to be looking outside of ourselves. And then that wantingness is going to cause us trouble. It's going to cause us trouble. As one of my teachers said to me once, when you want something in the worst way, that's usually how you get it. Think about that. So anyway, you get the idea. So the teachings that the Buddha gave, they offer a framework for understanding our thoughts and our sense of self-identity. And we can see loneliness as not a permanent state, but something that passes like everything else. This too shall pass. And through the practice of love and compassion meditation, we can build love and compassion for ourselves and by extension with everybody else. And so we won't feel lonely anymore. We'll actually have that sense of, through the solitude of our meditation practice, whether we are alone for meditation or if we're alone together with the group, we can build silent support for ourselves and for others. So I thought this was a good thing to talk about today. To talk about the fact that, yes, a lot of what we go through in life does make us feel isolated and alone. It's because of all of the information madness that's going on around us and all the social media. We can feel alone. We can feel separate. But through getting to know ourselves better and befriending ourselves and our emotions and learning how to work with ourselves and work with our emotions, we can then, by extension, see how other people feel just like us. And then we can begin to be prompted to make connection with other people and talk with them in ways that are constructive and that build engagement and communication. So I think I'll shut up now because I think that's enough. And maybe we can have a discussion. We've got 2 question microphones. And so if you have a comment or an observation or a question, it could have something to do with the topic. It might not have something to do with the topic. You know, I'm pretty much open for business. We'll spend a few minutes doing that. Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Lama Kathy.
Good morning.
Thank you for your teaching today. So I don't know if you've been sneaking about in my car or kind of lurking in the back of my mind.
Sure.
But lately, I've been kind of out of sorts.
Yeah, you might need to get a little closer. Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was. I was and I finally realized that I was reacting to a sense that the world feels very hostile. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that I was becoming very cranky.
Okay, yeah.
My normal levels of tolerance for other people was not what I would like it to be.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I guess, I don't know if this is more of a question or an observation. Once I realized that I was reacting to the hostility that I felt like was around me all the time, I kind of thought, well, great, what do I do?
Right.
And my meditation wasn't sitting well, I'll put it that way. So I guess my question, if I have one, is the best way to kind of deal with that in a way that doesn't have me
Yeah.
pushing back.
Yeah. I really get that. I really get that because I think everybody in this room can actually relate because at one time or another we've been overloaded by everything. And I understand what you're saying about there just being so much hostility, sort of free-floating hostility, just kind of throughout around the world right now, because a lot of things are going in ways that people can't relate to, or they don't feel comfortable, or actually they get angry about, right? So there's a lot going on right now. And yeah, I think it could make a person very reactive. I think it could. It could make a person really reactive. And I think that it would take like a two-step approach. The first step would be to feel the feeling. Like, you have the feeling like a tightness in your chest or just clenching in your jaw, kind of like something's not right. I feel like a growly bear. I'm kind of a growly bear today. And you don't want to hurt yourself and you don't want to hurt other people, because that's what I'm hearing in your comment. You don't want that growly bear to come and take a bite out of you or about anybody you care about. And so being aware of it, I think, is the first step. And then once we become aware of like how we're feeling, even if we can't thoroughly identify it, just like, like I'm overloaded, or there's too much hostility around me, or I just don't feel good, whatever you do with it. There are a couple of ways that the second step will depend on what works best for you. First step is to recognize it, because otherwise, if you don't recognize what you're feeling, you might dive into any story that presents itself. Like, that person looked at me funny. I'm going to give them the stink eye. But you see what I'm saying? You could just dive into any story you choose. It's kind of like, oh my God, it's choose your own adventure. It's like you could do that, right? But what if, instead of diving into whatever hit you next, you just say, yeah, I'm feeling crummy. I'm feeling cranky. You know what? I'm just going to take a minute and breathe. I'm just going to breathe. That's step two. Maybe your method of working with that feeling is just breathe. One of my teachers, he passed away a few years ago. He was a Tibetan doctor, and he said, just do the square breathing thing. Breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and breathe out for a count of 4. And do that a few times. That'll get your heart rate down and maybe give you a little clarity in your mind. And that's one way of working with it. Another way of working with it is to say, yeah, I'm feeling really crummy right now. And I bet you there are a lot of people right now in this world feeling just like me. Buddha, may we all be free of this feeling. May we all find our way through this feeling to the other side. So those two methods, just being with your breath instead of like thinking all the wild thoughts, just being with the breath, or making an aspiration, like, man, I don't like feeling like this, and I bet nobody else does either, so may we all be uplifted. May we all be lifted out of that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if maybe you have another idea of something you could do in that moment. Because there are lots of other techniques a person could use. If a person liked prayer, for example, they could recite a prayer that they liked, Or they could just look at they could ask themselves, like, well, who's thinking this? There's nobody there, So, I mean, there's lots of different ways, right?
Yes. Thank you, Lama.
But you got to notice first. You have to notice first and identify it. And even if you can't identify it and just say, I'm cranky, that's good enough for me. Yeah. Thank you. My husband and I have a thing. Whenever I get really, really overloaded and tired, I say to my, I actually, hey, Mike, you're going to love this. Whenever I get really overloaded and I just say to my husband, I'm feeling cranky. And he always says the same thing, go take a nap. I'm just so cranky. Yeah. Anyway, because it just helped, you know. Yes, yeah.
Thank you for this talk. A few sayings from Zen came to my mind. One about sort of getting caught with stories is just let go or be dragged.
Let go or be dragged. I like that.
And you know that I definitely get dragged by my stories sometimes. And the other that's more about like loneliness and connection is that enlightenment is intimacy with all things.
Say that again?
Enlightenment is intimacy with all things.
Ooh, mm-hmm.
And I don't have that full experience, of course, but you know, my understanding of that is that when you're able to connect with things, living or non-living, human, plant, animal, it's hard, you know, it's hard to feel lonely. But I have a pretty complicated relationship, I think, with loneliness. And you know, I've kind of been a little, a little strange, and you know, it's been my whole life really. And I guess like my question is then, it's become such a thing for me that I've almost started to romanticize it. Like,
oh yeah,
this is my story. I'm just so lonely, and you know,
okay.
like this is my lot in life. You know, it's a
Yeah.
story, but it's almost like spinning it positively.
I get you.
You know, because it's been so pervasive and trying to make the most of it. So, you know, you talked a bit about dropping the stories.
Yeah.
What about like specifically when dropping the stories when they're kind of positive and it's almost like part of your identity, you know?
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing this because I feel like lots of people do this. Lots of people go through this. I remember going through some of this myself when I was younger. And it does almost feel like, at first it's a negative story that we tell ourselves, and then that's a very interesting take on it to tell yourself a positive story. And I think that it's going to take a while before we go beyond the story into that enlightenment state where we have an intimate relationship with everything, right? We know it's out there. Not quite sure how we're going to get there, but we know that it's out there, and that's good. That's really good to know that that potential is out there. At some point, though, I think that even positive stories will need to be abandoned at some point. And there's a wonderful book, I recommend it a lot. It's it's by Pema Chodron's, one of her teachers, Dzigar, D-Z-I-G-A-R, D-Z-I-G-A-R, Dzigar, Control. And it's called, the name of the book is It's Up to You. And his take on the stories we tell ourselves is that sometimes when we feel like we can do it, not always can we do it, but he says when you feel like you can, start to ask that story questions, like it was a person. Like, you know, like, how real are you? You know, how real are you? You know, is this really necessarily true? And because in the end, we have to find ways through the stories. You see, we have to go through them. We don't have to necessarily abandon them, but we have to see through them at some point, where we realize that they're just a story. Okay, so that can happen, but then there's the whole thing of the bodhisattva vow and the bodhisattva training, where we tell ourselves a positive story. We tell ourselves a positive story. We say, oh yes, I am a bodhisattva in training, like the t-shirt. We have, let the record show, there's someone sitting here with one of our fundraising t-shirts on from our friend in California. I have a friend who's a cartoonist, and he created a bodhisattva in training t-shirt. And I think it's awesome. But we give ourselves that identity as well. So I would say a positive story is probably better than a negative story. And then eventually we can go to a bodhisattva story where we can use our feelings of being alone and not necessarily romanticize it, but say, may I and all beings find connection. You know, because Dzigar Contral and Pema Chodron both talk about this. They say, you know, what you're thinking about something is just it's a story you've told yourself, but it's not necessarily true. There may be a different way of seeing your situation. And there was something else I was going to say about that, but I have old brain. Old brain is fun. You know a lot of stuff, but then you forget it. But the whole idea of when you feel something and turning it into an opportunity for connection. You know, may I and all beings go beyond loneliness. May I and all beings, you know, transcend loneliness. May all of us, oh, I know what I was going to say. Pema Chodron, she says sometimes, she said there are 3 difficult things to do. She said the first difficult thing is to see what we do, like see our reactions and identify our reactions, see the healthy ones, the unhealthy ones, just see what we do. And for the unhealthy ones, do something different. She said, even if it's weird, just do something different. And then the last one is make that the way you live your life. In other words, you leave no negative mental affliction unaffected. You know, you engage with all of them. Well, that's going to take time. But one of my favorite things that she said is, I mentioned this last week, I think, too, that instead of saying, oh, darn it, I keep making that same mistake. Oh, I'm just so terrible. Instead of thinking or saying stuff like that, you could say, oh, man, I'm so adorable. I thought that was going to work. No, it didn't work. You know, and like, I'm just so human. Wow, I'm so human. Look at me. You know, and it's weird, but it is different. It's not going down the drain with an emotion like, oh, you know, I'm alone, you know, whatever, that kind of thing. But you can make aspirations that you form connections with everybody. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, you know, when you get up in the morning, you can think things like, may everything I do today benefit beings in some way. That's connecting. I don't know, it's just, but I really appreciate the creativity that you're bringing to it, and I applaud that creativity and say, see how much farther you can go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. There's time for one more if there's one more out there. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, these are good questions. That good discussion going. Yeah.
Hi, Lama Kathy.
Hi.
Lately, I've been finding myself being really good at letting go.
Mm-hmm.
So, letting go of thoughts, letting go of suffering, letting go of things that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And lately, I think that I've gone a little bit too far.
Okay.
I have a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and of letting go of everything that bothers me,
Mm-hmm.
including people.
Mm-hmm.
And in for a short amount of time, it felt good because
Sure.
there's nothing is bothering me.
Yeah.
But when it's coming to, lately, I felt like that becoming too much. Like, that bothers me. Let it go. Like, vanish from my head, vanish from my thoughts. That person bothers me. Let them go. And I felt like it's getting a little bit, maybe not so healthy, because if you
Yeah.
can just let go of everything, then you just really be alone.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm puzzled.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is another these are really excellent questions, because I think there are many people who have felt the way you have felt. I'm going to give a silly example. I have a friend who just retired from being the principal of a business. He was like the vice president of something for a small business. And he had to care about a lot of things, and a lot of things bothered him, right? But he was worried after he started meditating, things bothered him less. And he said, uh-oh, does this mean I'm going to be ineffective at my job? You know, is my lack of caring about things going to read to other people as I don't care about my job? Is my lack of, you know, being upset about things going to make people think I'm a robot or something? And so a lot of people say that to me. This is not your question, I don't think. But it could lead to examples like that, where people are worried that they're going to be dysfunctional as human beings because they don't get mad and angry like they used to. And I think that there's a couple things you can look out for, and you'll know if you've gone too far, okay? Because there's like, you know, there's a couple of signals, there's a couple of signs that will tell you you're going too far. One of the signs would be that you begin to feel callous toward the suffering of other people. Like, doesn't matter. You know, that person's suffering, too bad for them. That would not be good. That would be too far. You know, that you stopped caring about other people's suffering. The other thing, the signal you can look out for, the sign that you've gone too far, is the feeling superior, like, oh, I'm better than all those people. You know, look at them get all upset about things. I'm not upset about that. I'm better than them. That's not good either, because that means that you've really turned something very positive into something very negative, you know? Does that make sense? So those are the signs that you've gone too far. I don't know that not getting upset and angry about things, I don't know that that's a bad thing, because you can be more creative in helping people when you're not angry. You know, if you get really upset about things, you can't think straight. So now you're not upset. Now it's easier for you to see solutions, right? Because you no longer have those negative mental afflictions. What was it? What was it? Something or be dragged? What was it? Let go or be dragged, right? You know, so you aren't being dragged around by these mental afflictions, you know. And so now you have more space and relaxation to help people find solutions. That's very connecting. That's not bad at all. So I think you're not too far yet, because I don't think you've become like this selfish person, like, oh, I don't care about other people, or this superior person, like, oh, I'm better. I don't think that's your situation. And at the same time, what would help to prevent going too far, okay? So there's signs that you're going too far, but then there's a way to prevent going too far. And that is to practice some compassion meditation. Because when you sit on your seat and you imagine that love and goodness flows out of you to all beings with the out-breath, that's connecting. That's not being superior, and that's not caring, you see? It's caring in a really creative and loving way for everybody. So if you're just letting go of negativity, that's great all by itself. But if you want to increase love and compassion, then you can do love and compassion meditation for anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes in a day. You don't have to do it for a big, long time, just a little bit every day. And then that little bit of love that you're practicing every day, you won't go too far, because your caring will actually increase. Does that make sense? Because you're practicing caring, right? Does that make sense? Is there something I didn't answer, though? I'm thinking I missed something in your question. Did I miss something?
I think you answered it beautifully.
Sorry?
I think you answered it beautifully. I think it's sometimes I feel like I'm so alone in my head. In a way, it felt very good, like I'm very clear. But at the same time, I'm lacking. I understand what compassion is, but I think lately I'm so focused in one direction of just letting go, letting go of things that bothers me.
I get it.
That I feel like I'm a little bit off balance.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So working on using your imagination to send love to all beings on the out breath for 5 minutes or something every day, that's going to actually increase the feeling of connection. It'll increase the feeling of connection. And see, that way you won't go too far. Because it'd be like that? Yeah, I think you can do it. I think you, yeah. Because, it's really true, because if you feel like it's out of balance, because that's what I'm hearing you say is that it's out of balance, well, then you can put some good things in the balance by sending love to all beings. And that will make sure you don't go too far.
Yes. I will try that.
Okay, give it a try. And let me know how it works, okay? Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, because of time, we have to stop today, but this has really been a good conversation. I really appreciate, hearing from all of you, and I really appreciate hearing what you have to say and talking about this. And it takes time. It takes time, because you're right, we have some bad habits to let go of, but then we have to take on the good ones, as well as letting go of the bad ones. So slowly, slowly, we have the capacity. We have the capacity to build good habits. I know we can do it, because we've done it pretty well so far. Well, because of time, we have to stop, but let's gather together all the goodness and dedicate it. The dedication of merit is 2 stanzas on the back of the sheet, and for time constraints, we'll recite them in English. And it begins, and we'll gather together all the goodness and dedicate it to our accomplishment of good habits. Okay, we'll start with the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, see you next week. All right? Be safe out there. Okay, thank you to the sound department. Yeah, thank you.